All right, Seth, let's start with Kirby Smart and the off-the-field stuff. He was asked about it. It sounds like he's making a different change, though, from a fine standpoint. Is that correct? Explain sort of his thinking on handling some of the stuff that's happening outside of the program.
So he says it's been happening for more than a year. They just haven't publicized it. That guys that get in trouble, he didn't specify whether it was just speeding tickets or if it has to be an arrest or whatever, but he said that the collective is taking money away from them. And he also didn't specify whether it's a fine or whether it's withholding the next one. I've heard, before he said this today, I had heard from somebody that was withholding payment. There's also questions about, how does that involve the contract for the NIL collective, et cetera. I don't know, but he's conveying the point that they are doing something. And they're also, they've been suspending guys, and they're going to suspend some of these players that have been arrested this offseason. He's just not publicizing it yet. And he defends that by saying he doesn't think that they should be further embarrassed. I don't know about that. I think if they're going to be suspended, I would announce it, because I think it's important to send a PR message, to people like me who are also driving around Athens, that you are trying to do something about this. But he did today come with an awareness that he needs to continue to address this publicly, and it's the only way it's going to go away is when these things stop happening.
Yeah. So Saban's on set. Obviously, he has a really deep relationship with Kirby. Lane Kiffin on Monday, pretty emotional after the passing of his father, and his relationship with Nick Saban. Do you feel like Kirby has evolved, changed? Maturing is not the right word, but do you feel like there's a different type of Kirby? He was very sort of introspective about his age today. What is your perspective on Kirby's evolution?
I think he's largely the same. He's the same guy. He was asked today, one of our about you're 48, you're still relatively young, but you've won 2 championships, and he's like, I wasn't in this to chase championships, and whether you believe that or not, that's the Nick Saban mentality. That's it was the Mike Krzyzewski mentality, the Bill Belichick mentality, that it's about the process. And I think that part is the same guy. I think everything else is kind of just naturally being older and just kind of evolving as a person, as you naturally would if Kirby was not a football coach. He'd be working for a Fortune 500 company and probably be fairly high up. He just would be naturally aging and maturing the way he is. But I think he's also becoming more comfortable with kind of being the guy in college football now that Saban is not the guy anymore. That I think Kirby kind of understands that he's that guy right now, but he also understands that he will only remain that guy if his team continues to not necessarily win the championship every year, but be one of the main teams in contention. So he wants to do everything he can to keep their spot.
They're going to be picked to win the conference. They're probably preseason number 1 by most polls. Maybe there's another team in there, Ohio State. But if you look around this league, what teams have some of the attributes that you would think are capable of challenging Georgia? Does that make sense?
Well, I mean, it depends on how much has Alabama changed under Kalen DeBoer. They may have lost a lot of talent when DeBoer came in. He's doing a good job recruiting so far. But there's a lot of those players on that Alabama team that beat Georgia last December. And, Kalen DeBoer has shown that he's a good coach. So Georgia may have more talent than Alabama right now, but that game's in Tuscaloosa. Kalen DeBoer is a good coach. That's going to be fascinating to see that transition. Texas is a talented team. That game's in Texas. Ole Miss, that game's in Ole Miss. And, look, Georgia, I guess I can imagine them going 12-0, but I definitely wouldn't bet on it. And 11-1 with that schedule would be really good. And 10-2 will almost certainly get them in the playoff. So with Georgia's schedule, it's also just going to be a matter of, can they do it every week? Because there's so many more pitfalls potentially on this year's schedule than there were last year. I mean, last year they didn't have a real game until the Auburn game, and that wasn't in week 5, and that wasn't supposed to be a real game. This year they start right off with Clemson, and then they've got a trip to Kentucky in a couple weeks, and then a couple weeks after that is Alabama, and then Texas in October, and Ole Miss in November. And, they're going to have to bring it every week. And I'm not sure. There's people that say 9-3, oh, that gets you in the playoffs. Like, I don't know. I think the playoffs can be harder to get into than people imagine. I think Georgia's gonna, it's gonna be. I would still pick Georgia to make the playoff, but I don't know that I would pick them first tomorrow because of the schedule.